So in several videos previously I have shown canvassing, but I haven't really explained what I'm trying to do. Several people have asked what actually I'm doing. So this is the canvas and I've pressed it. I pressed it and bowed the edge back, shrunk the canvas into this part here in an effort to get this long when it goes into the forepart. I'm going to place the forepart over the top, make sure that the darts are aligned in the correct place. This customer needs a small cut in the chest here. Just check that that's correct. And you can see here that the grain, here's the front, and the grain, the actual canvas is coming back from the edge, probably 1/2 inch, because I've shrunk it that way. So my first stitch is through the front cut. Not in the top, which I don't pull all the way down to the fabric. I've got it about 1/8 of an inch slack in the top. And then I'm stitching directly through the dart, through the front dart, into the canvas, right the way through it. And these stitches just kissing the surface. I'm not pulling them tight at all. Now the waist is about here. On a double-breasted, the button is below the waist a little bit. That's the way I cut it anyway. So from this point, I'm going to stretch because I want the canvas to be long through here. So I'm going to stretch the fabric over the top of the canvas, like so. And now I've let go of it. I've trapped a little bit of canvas in there. A little tack at above where the pocket is, because eventually the pocket will be cut through, and you don't really want to cut the basting through. Other side of the pocket, and another little tack. Make sure that the fabric, I'm not stretching it really, I'm just making sure that it's not slack on the canvas. And these stitches slightly loose. Tack it off at the bottom. That's the first stitch. You can see in here that there's a bit of canvas trapped underneath there. So the second stitch is going to come through the middle here, and I'm pushing it before I start. I'm going to push length into the canvas by stretching the fabric over the top, holding the canvas down there, and these stitches are going in slightly long, and I haven't pulled the knot down flush to the fabric. I leave a little bit of slack there because later on I may want it to move ever so slightly. So the third stitch goes from the waist downwards, but from the button. So it's slightly above where this button position is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the canvas up, the fabric up against the canvas and then down. And what I'm doing there is I'm making sure that all the slack in the canvas, which is coming across here, is coming in there parallel. I haven't got any above the button, it's all below. And then about 1 inch back from the edge, make a stitch, and I'm trapping that bit of length parallel across the front. And these stitches actually come down and hit the fabric. And then at the front there, I just work a little bit of slack into the fabric between these two stitches, so that aids the front of the coat to curl round. So this stitch, I'm working from the button position upwards. I put the wooden block behind here so that the shape that I've got in the 4-part isn't wanting to pull it back that way. I'm laying it down so I can make it flat between this stitch and the position of the next stitch. So I start at the top of the previous stitch, and then I'm stitching between each stitch. I'm pushing the fabric up over the canvas, and I'm basting in behind the break line. Each time I push it up, I'm pushing it kind of along the break line, which is slightly on the bias of the cloth. That allows me to stretch it over the canvas. The canvas and the cloth are on the same grain. It looks like I'm being really brutal with it, but what's actually happening is that I'm stretching the fabric and it's springing back over the cloth, having drawn a little bit of the canvas in, like that. And then 2 extra pieces of fabric go in here. One is a piece of silesia, which is cotton, and one is a piece of linen holland. And the linen holland has the grain running along where the edge of the lapel will be. So this linen here, it forms 3 purposes. One is to stop the lapel point stretching over here where it's on the bias. If it stretches there, the outside edge of the lapel will dish. That's got to be kept firm so it can't stretch. The buttonhole is going to be along the same line, so that linen on the same grain will stop the buttonhole distorting, and the linen itself will support the lapel point. When that's all padded together, just adds a little bit more structure and stiffness to that part. This stitch is just holding these layers together, not really doing an awful lot more than that. And I make sure it's loose so that when I turn the edge back later on in the process here, that this part I can still roll the lapel and it's got a little bit of movement in there. And the next stitch is from the other side of the central one. Now you can really see why you don't pull this knot down tight. And because I'm making it flat from there to there and flat from there to there, it means when the canvas is turned out the other way round, that actually the canvas has got a bit of length horizontally. So I'm making it long vertically and I'm making it long horizontally too. I'll find out where the waist is. Somewhere there. I'm working this up, and these stitches short and flat to the canvas. I don't want them to move. I want it to hold it. Really hold it. This stitch has got to be far enough away from the side so that you can gain access and sew the sleeve in later on. As I'm doing this, you can see the canvas slightly long in there. At this point, I'm coming pretty much straight up the grain of the fabric and using that as a guideline so that I'm making it straight, kind of parallel with this dart. If I know where I am, then the stitches, each time I do it, are in pretty much the same place. And I'm not marking them out, I'm just doing it by eye. And I've done this so many times before, they end up pretty much in the same place. Very important, this is tacked off strongly. Don't want any of that to move. And you can see that the cloth wants to come back this way. You can see it in there. Later on, I'm just going to lightly take that away. You don't want it stretched over this part. Too much canvas in there will result in a wrinkle through here. Doesn't look good. And then the next stitch is around the side here, holding the fabric down to the canvas so that the two are locked together and you can't stretch either, or less likely to. It's very important that this is kept short through the making progress, otherwise you lose the chest in your garment and this distorts. And then the last stitch in the actual canvassing part, before I put the bridle on, so I'm stitching from the button point upwards. This is going to be padded, and the padding needs to finish way above the button, a couple of inches really, so that when the lapel rolls you can't see the little prick stitches going through here underneath. So the bottom here, I roll it as if it's padded and put a basting stitch. There's the button position, and I've gone this far above. The padding's going to start above that, so therefore when the lapel rolls you won't be able to see any padding stitches here. It's just a little bit there so it's rolled over. So now I'm applying the bridle. The bridle is to get a little bit more chest in here and to control the front of the garment. I'm going to give myself a couple of marks between which I'm going to draw the bridle a 1/4 inch. I actually pull this here between these two marks 3/8 of an inch, but when I've released the pins and sewn the thing on, these two marks will come back to a 1/4. So the back edge of the bridle, I've made it on the selve edge of the piece of lining I'm using, and I'm tacking every other stitch. I make a stitch and then tack it, and I'm easing that length in the canvas underneath, so I'm locking it together. Pretty much regardless of the chest size of the customer, I don't alter this. It's always drawn a 1/4 inch. The dart through here is how I can control how much chest to put in the garment. This cut here can be really quite large. I don't do a dog leg. I don't like it. It gets very difficult to canvas. It also causes problems with the break line because the break line shifts across if you take a dart out of here. This I just spaced down without the locking stitches. I'm making sure that I get the shortness, the length in the canvas not twisted, and the shortness in the bridle in the correct position. I'm looking at the grain of both as I'm basting it. So this process is called blocking the canvas, which basically means to shrink all the canvas that you put in to the forepart. I need to put the vacuum on here. I'm making sure that I'm shrinking everything in that I've drawn in with the bridle. Keeping the shape in the garment. And then I'm going to fold back the canvas to the inlay so that at this point I don't have to it looks cleaner from the outside when you finish it off. It looks more like the finished garment. So now the canvas is pressed, or the forepart is pressed. You can see here that it's very clean because you've got the ease, especially through here. The canvas actually wants to go straight. It wants to swing back this way, but it can't because it's trapped on the fabric. And it's that that's holding it dead clean like that, completely flat. It could be a little bit better pressed there. Just because I've got a slight crease in the canvas, but apart from that, that's pretty good. So if we really go close up, you can see how clean the canvas and the forepart looks. You can't really get this look with something that's fused. It will never lose that shape that's in it. And this is a very lightweight, soft fabric. It's an 8-ounce Super 150s. You know, this isn't a 12-ounce. Pretty good start.